Dear brothers and sisters, a few days ago we heard and we've probably seen the news about the tragic incident of 3 Muslim youth being shot to death. So I thought about this incident and I just kept thinking about it and thinking about how this is affecting our community and how it impacts us as Muslims. So I started looking deeper into it and remembered that a few months ago, on December 4th to be exact, December 4th, 2014, a man rammed his truck into a car that was owned by 2 Somali teens. 2 teens were just left their community center. They were getting into their car, and this man rams his car into it, intentionally killing one of the boys. Right? So the guy was 15 years old. He severed both of his legs, and the kid was taken to the hospital and then pronounced dead at the scene not long after. Or I'm sorry, pronounced dead at the hospital not long after that accident. Similar situation, or similar to the situation that happened a few days ago, the man that committed this crime had threatened these people. He went to the community center, threatened the group, was upset that this was a Muslim community center and didn't like it. Similar to the guy a couple of days ago when he was threatening and went to these people's apartment on multiple occasions with his gun to his side, and nothing happened. So you start digging deeper and you see the same kind of pattern happens everywhere. Recently, a man followed a sister that was wearing the hijab to her car, threatened her with a gun. Luckily, nothing happened at that time. So we look at this pattern of people threatening a minority in a larger society. And we realize that this is nothing new. In between 1882 and 1962, 101 people were lynched in North Carolina, the same place where these 3 people were shot not long ago. In Kansas City, where this man was killed, the same thing. A lot of people were lynched and killed 50, 60, 70, and 80 years ago. The difference is, back then, the people that were lynched were African Americans. The people that were being killed were African Americans. The people that were being targeted were African Americans. They were targeted at their schools, at their homes, at their places of worship. Their places of worship were attacked. They were threatened. Plenty of mosques have been shot at, including mosques in this community. Similar to what was happening to the African American community years and years ago. If you would look at the African American community in the late 1800s and the 1900s, nobody would have thought that these people had hope. Media was against them. In July 25th, 1941, on July 25th, 1941, Emmett Lewis Till was lynched. A 14-year-old boy was lynched and killed and tortured and mutilated and was dumped in a river. His only mistake that he was African American and he talked to a 21-year-old married lady at a grocery store. Her husband didn't like that fact. He went and got his stepbrother. They went to the boy's grandmother's house, grabbed him from the house, tortured him, killed him, and got away with it. Because people were accepting of that kind of behavior at that time. In November 1960, almost 20 years later, a 6-year-old Ruby Bridget walks into an all-white school protected by U.S. Marshals. And that was one of the first changes that people start seeing. Between that of the killing and the lynching in the 1941 day until the 1962. We look at 2008, we had the first African American president. So within the span of probably 80 years, people went from lynching African Americans, from killing African Americans, from torturing African Americans, to making them presidents. And you look at anywhere around you, in any corporation, in any government facility, in any business, African Americans are everywhere. But to them, that journey wasn't easy. It didn't come free, and they had to pay for it. So when we look at the incidents that recently happened, a few days ago with the 3 Muslims that were shot to death, and if you talk to the ladies that washed the bodies of the 2 sisters, they said one of the sisters was shot 3 times in the back of the head, and the other one was shot 2 times, along with other body shots to them. This was not over a parking dispute. Now, whether the courts will rule it as a parking dispute or not, whether the courts will give it or give the families their justice, that's something completely different. But what we know is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give the parents justice. So when we look at this incident, we have to look at it from multiple perspectives, from multiple cameras, from multiple angles. If we look at it from the angle of the killer, and how the media is presenting this to the rest of the world, to them he didn't really do anything bad. I mean, yeah, he killed 3 people, but he was angry. There was a dispute over a parking lot, and he ends up shooting these people. Media is covering it as just a basic incident. If you follow NPR or if you follow any of the major news broadcasts, any other incident would have been covered probably throughout the whole day for days, if not weeks. This incident, along with plenty of other incidents, didn't get basic coverage. The media is partially responsible for that Islamophobia that people feel. You know, sometimes you really can't blame the general public much for what they think, because on one hand, they have media filling their brains with Islamophobia, and then on the other hand, us, Muslims, are not doing anything about it. And I'm not saying, you know, go riot or protest or do anything crazy. No. All what we have to do is be ourselves. Be Muslims. We haven't done anything wrong. And Islam doesn't teach us about any or to do anything wrong. So I don't care what people say Islam does, because I know what Islam says. I know what I do, and I have to be proud of what I do. I have to reach out to the community. I have to reach out to my neighbors. How many neighbors do we know on a first name basis? How much of their personal life do we know, and how much of their personal life or of our personal lives do they know? I mean, we're good people, right? Because it's going to be one of two things. Either what the media says about Muslims is true, or it's wrong. And from my perspective, it's wrong. So I have to present the other side of the story. We have to look after each other as Muslims. The people that were killed few days ago were Middle Easterns. The guy that was killed in December was African. His parents were Somalis. How much do we really care about Muslims who get killed or die who are not from the same ethnicity? We really have to break that silo. Because before we start pointing fingers at what the media says and what the media does, how much are we doing to fix the problems that we have? You know, if you're dealing with this issue overseas or in different countries around the world, you're going to have the majority of the people from the same ethnicity, same color, same race. So that may not be a problem. But here, we have a melting pot of Muslims. Look around you in this masjid. We probably have 15 to 20 different nationalities, covering probably all different continents. Do we get upset the same amount of sadness when somebody from my country dies to the same country or the same as somebody else's country? What have we done from that perspective? If we look at it from the eyes, if we look at this incident that happened a few days ago, from the eyes of the family, from the eyes of the parents, from the eyes of the siblings, of the people who were killed, we see patience. I mean, if you looked at any of the videos that they made, any of the interviews that they made, it was tough for them, but they were patient. Those people did not have that faith overnight. Did not have that patience overnight. They prepared for a tragedy in some sort beforehand. They had faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They planned that their main goal was to seek paradise. They knew that this life was going to end. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested them with a very, very difficult test. He took 2 children from one side and a son from the other side. Probably we can't fathom the pain that these people are going through for losing their children, but they were patient. The sister gave an interview of the brother. His brother also gave an interview. And subhanAllah, regardless of how sad and upset you could tell on their faces, they were still patient. They believed when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that those who go through trials and say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَيْهِمْ صَلَوَاتٌ مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُهْتَدُونَ. Those are the people that have been given that right path. Those people prepared for this day. So how much have we prepared? If we get in an accident and our cars get damaged, or we lose something, or something gets broken, we get upset. If I have a watch that I love and that watch is broken and I lose it, or if I lose my watch, I get very upset. Have we really prepared ourselves for tragedies like this? Have you thought about that concept, that one day you may get a phone call that your son or your daughter is no longer here? Have you thought about that concept and thought about how would you deal with this? Have you thought about the concept that you may wake up one day and the brothers that you were talking to yesterday are no longer there, or your sister, or your spouse? How much have we prepared ourselves? And the brother came out yesterday, the guy's brother came out yesterday and saying, we need to calm down. He said, our families are not asking you to retaliate. Our families are not asking you to fight back. But we have rather to present Muslims in a good way. We have to continue the journey of being good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ. A good deed does not equal a bad deed. And he said, ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. He said, start with good. He said, push for whatever is good. He said, even for whoever you have an issue with, trying to deal with them as a close person. Trying to have that connection with them to, as they say, kill them with kindness. And this is what the family is dealing with now. At one point, they have to deal with the sadness, they have to deal with the tragedy that they're dealing with. But then, at the same time, they have to continue believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and believing in the fact that they have to be patient. This is a test that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them through, and now I have to deal with this. I have to deal with the fact that for the rest of my life, I will never see my son grow older. I will never see grandchildren from that son or daughter. And I will never see them again. Because this is not an easy trial, or not an easy test to go through. Now, if you look at it from the perspective of the victims, the people that were shot 3 days ago, they had thousands of people come to make Salat al-Janazah for them. The masjid where they wanted to do it wasn't enough, so they carried it outside in soccer fields at the university, and those got full. So they had to overflow to other fields. They said by the time all those people made it to the cemetery, they were already done burying the people and on their way home. That's how many people wanted to go from the prayer to the funeral, to make sure these people were buried. Now, what did these people do to deserve this? Because this is a good sign of a good ending. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him this ending not because He wanted to give it to them, because these people deserved it. These people earned it. They worked hard for it. They didn't know when their day was going to come. One of them was 19, the other one was 21, and I think the other one was 23. If you asked any of those three people last week, when do you think you were going to die? None of them would have given you the answer that I think next week. If we ask ourselves now, when do we think we're going to die? The answer that we're going to give is, yeah, when I maybe get to 60, 70, and 80. But what they did, although they didn't know when they were going to die, They prepared for that day. They had charity groups going to help the homeless and to help the needy. They were traveling all over the world to help children who were in need. And their vision continued and continues today because they wanted to prepare for that day. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله forgiveness. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله سيدنا محمد صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. Dear brothers and sisters, if we need to take the few points out of this khutbah today, then let it be these points. One, let's look at the history of African Americans and what they had to go through and the struggle that they had to go through and the struggle that they continue to have to this day. But yet, because they worked hard and they pushed hard, we now have the first African American president. So there's hope. But the key is that we have to work for it. We have to work for that goal. Until we present ourselves otherwise, media will say whatever they want to say about us, and nobody will think twice about it. Because us as Muslims, us as doctors, as engineers, as business owners, as community members, want nothing to do with being Muslims. You know, maybe African Americans couldn't really hide their identity, right? So whenever you walked, people knew that you were African American, so you were discriminated against. But in our case, we can get away with saying, yeah, we're not Muslims or not even say it. But we really have to be proud of this. We're not doing anything wrong. Islam doesn't teach us about anything wrong. So we need to present ourselves as Muslims. Now don't go cheat or steal or lie and be proud that you're a Muslim. No, that's nothing we should be proud of. Prepare yourself in case Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you through a tragedy like this. In case Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts you through a very difficult trial of losing one of your children, or all of your children, or some of your siblings or spouses, or whoever the case may be. And last but not least, what have we done to prepare for the day when we die? Because in the example of the 15-year-old boy and these three young people, they had no idea that they weren't going to see 25.